Hello, everybody. Tim Grimes here with Marvin Daniels. Marvin, hello. Good morning.
What's going on?
I've got my cool puppet theater backdrop here, Marv. My 7-year-old has been doing a lot of puppet theater with her friends when they come over. And that seems like an appropriate backstory for what we're going to discuss today, which involves doing shadow work and in the hope of manifesting a better romantic relationship, a so-called SP. For those of you who don't know, we, Marvin and I do in-depth relationship coaching using principles that Neville Goddard, Florence Scovel Shinn, other, popular law of attraction, law of assumption type coaches utilize and are so popular today. However, Marvin and I go much deeper than most of the SP coaches you will find in this space. To be frank, we go deeper than any of them. We've worked with a lot of people. We started working together, teaming up about a year ago. And there's so many interesting things we've kind of discovered, certain themes that run through this work. And one of those themes, unsurprisingly, is childhood stuff, childhood trauma, and how that later affects relationships. And this, in a way, should seem pretty obvious, right? And if you go to a good, relationship therapist or someone, like that's probably the first thing they're going to ask. However, in the SP space, we often see that kind of pushed under the rug, pushed under the bed, or whatever you want to call it. And it's fascinating because, to use Neville language, I know you love to use this term, Marv, in regards to this, we have to kind of revise our relationship with our past, including our potential trauma that we had with our family or with relationships we had when we were younger. Isn't that kind of, you think, the starting point for a lot of this stuff, Marv?
100%.
Yeah. And what's interesting is we do offer free calls for people who are serious about working with us. Now, before you're like, oh, I'm going to bash that link and get on a call with Marv and Tim, we've become incredibly selective with who we speak to. And, you have to fill out this application. And more importantly, you have to be serious about changing your relationship with yourself in order to get on a call with us. And you have to be ready to invest money and time, which most of you, just to be honest, in the SP space are not. But what we've noticed is the people we've gotten on these initial calls with, or some of the people who are like, you know what, I just want to start with a single session, which is always a red flag. But Marv and I are nice guys and usually will let that fly at first so they get a better sense of what coaching is like with us. But what Marv and I have noticed is we go into this free consultation or maybe this, one-off call with some of these people, with a lot of these people, actually. And we will start asking them about their relationship history. They'll talk about their current situation, usually, oh, I want this SP back. Sometimes it's like, I want a new SP, but 80-90% of the time, it's like, I want this old person back. I can't live without them. I'm stuck in this pattern. I don't know what to do. The techniques aren't working. Robotic affirming, visualizing. There's all these creators online telling me different stuff. And we're basically like, just cool your beans. Like, you're okay right now. And let's talk about your relationship history and your relationship with your parents and your early childhood memories. And like the record stops, like, and then we dive into it. And Marv and I get deep with these people really quickly, usually. So what happens often is we do somatic work, parts type work, IFS type work, which, you've seen us talk about in other videos. On my channel, I've spoken about IFS a lot because it's such a popular and effective modality. But what often happens is, so we start talking to people about, their childhood trauma, like potentially like, a divorce that their parents went through that affected them, or a relationship when they were younger that was somehow traumatic. And we don't ask them about it intellectually. We're like, where in the body is this coming up? And they identify that part, and we start talking to that part non-judgmentally, which is like, basic parts 101 IFS type work. And just to be clear, like, I'm not a certified IFS therapist, nor do I want to be. But I really think these tools are helpful, and I've utilized these tools enough to see how effective they are across the board. I mean, with most people we work with, Marv, that when we do this, don't you think like there's ridiculous results in a very short period of time?
100%.
Yeah, it's like it's ridiculous. I mean, literally half the people we do IFS with on an initial call have like some kind of small or large breakthrough moment. Many are, in tears after doing this for 10 or 15 minutes. Now, this is all important, but the reason that we're making this video and, Marv and I are chatting about this today, what we want you to understand, first of all, is IFS and similar somatic modalities are very helpful. But when you have this initial breakthrough moment, this is the start of your SP journey and of coaching. This is not the end. People often have these breakthrough moments with us after a 30, 40-minute call, and they think that's it. They're like, I'm healed. I'm healed. I'm probably going to get my SP back. And Marv and I are like, okay, are you ready to start? Are you ready now to do 3 to 6 months of this work and see what that actually implied? And most people are like, oh no, I'm good. I'm good. And Papa Bear Tim is here to tell you, you are not good. You are not good. Those shadows, those puppets are going to start creeping back unless you keep on talking to that part. And if you do not have help talking to that part initially, you're not going to really, I mean, the work, the revelation you had meant something, but it's not going to be built upon enough usually to make it lasting. That is why we do IFS type work with clients early, is to open the door, open the floodgates. But once the floodgates are opened, a lot of stuff's going to come out, and you usually need help in order to deal with all the stuff that comes out. Thus ends my soliloquy. Welcome to my puppet theater, Marvin. Any thoughts about that? Wouldn't you say that's a very normal process for us in terms of when we actually do somatic work with people early, whether it's on a free initial call or like a first session?
Yeah, I would say so. I think most people don't know what to expect, but Tim does such a great job at walking people through the process. And it's funny, people they really start getting different scenes that pop up when they do these IFS practices. Sometimes it could be the form of I don't know, just something in earth. It could be a cloud, it could be a little girl, it could be an animal. You'll see different things pop up. So it's interesting when people actually do the IFS work with Tim. But I would definitely say that they, in the beginning, it's such a powerful tool because they don't realize they have all of these pent up emotions and that the body really is keeping the score. So when they finally listen to the body, then from there, they can start to unpack and unravel everything. But like Tim was saying, it's not a one-off type of thing. It's multiple times because you don't know down the road how often you're going to start feeling like crap because a lot of times it's we always like to say, when you take off that band-aid, obviously when you have a wound and you take off the bandage, it's like a hemorrhage, right? You're going to just start bleeding and bleeding and bleeding. And so that's essentially what happens. So you might feel good today, but then next week something might pop up, and how are you going to deal with it? Are you going to deal with it with a technique? Are you going to deal with it with, using the IFS, which is, to me, Tim always says in sessions with people, IFS is manifesting.
Yeah.
It is manifesting because you're dealing, it helps you. It's another way to revise the past in a sense. And that goes back to Neville. I think that might be my favorite Neville quote. I could be wrong. I have to go back and read all this stuff, obviously. But Neville says that any cause of evil in the present moment, keyword present moment, is the unrevised scenes of the past. So any evil you are experiencing right now is from the past. And so how do you deal with that? You deal with that by addressing it, whether it's, I think IFS might be the best way to honestly address that potentially. But because the mind work is so hard for most people. Most people say, "Oh, you hear all these Neville people, they say, "Oh, just affirm, just affirm." I'm just going to assume, I'm just going to do this, I'm just going to do that. And as you hear us religiously say, that all of that stuff is so much easier said than done. Just closing your eyes, because when you close your eyes, you affirm or visualize, and then you wake up and you get back into the 3D world, and you feel like nothing has changed. So now you're sitting there thinking, okay, I did this, I still feel like crap. And then the next day you do it and you say, oh damn, I still feel like crap. And then the next day you do it, you say, I still feel like crap. And you went a whole week, 2 weeks doing it, and you still feel like crap. And then you do a month and you still feel like crap. And you're like, why isn't this working? Because in my opinion, you're not really addressing the feelings that you've been running from, which is IFS in a sense. I think when you stop running from that part and you start to talk to that part and work with those parts, I think IFS is an extremely powerful tool, like Tim said, that we've used, and people have gotten great results, huge emotional releases, huge aha moments. And I mean, I think anybody should have it in their arsenal. So
Yeah, so well said. So well said. Um, if you want to get a sense too of what we're talking about in terms of the work with it, if you go to the link below in the description, we have a couple clients who were gracious enough to talk about their experiences working with us, and all three of those clients were doing real SP work, meaning recognizing the real SP is me, and all three of them leaned heavily on IFS to make changes, and like fast changes, right? This is the thing. You watch those stories on that page, and utilizing somatic stuff, IFS stuff, they were able to make shifts quickly. But this is the thing. Those three examples on that page, they were able to make shifts quickly, but they knew that wasn't the end. They knew they had to keep on going. And that is why coaching and having support is so vital, because you might make a shift, but then you don't really know what to do next. And then people in the SP community are like, oh, I'll just go on another session with my coach. To think a 60-minute, 30-minute, or we like to joke, a 15-minute, people offer fucking 15-minute coaching sessions, when you start to spiral is enough. What are you, fucking crazy? You need someone who's in your corner. I mean, that's why like the stuff that Marvin and I offer is in depth. You work for us usually for months, and we are here when you need us, because there are gonna be days, guys, where you're like, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. And you get on the Zoom with us or a qualified coach or counselor or therapist, and they're like, you are okay right now. This is part of the process. If you're by yourself, you don't know that. And to circle back to what you were saying about IFS, and I agree, it's so powerful a tool. That's why it's become so popular. I mean, this is like the go-to therapy tool for a lot of people when they have clients with trauma, just because it gets change, it changes stuff so much faster than traditional therapy, especially talk therapy. We have clients who are like, oh, I've been in therapy for years. We do freaking IFS with them for 25 minutes, and they're like, that was better than, the last 2 years of therapy I did. And I totally agree with you. It's just like Neville, just like Maxwell Maltz, psychocybernetics. Maltz talks about going to your quiet room and imagining. They call it internal family systems. You could also call it imaginative family systems, like, because it's imaginative work in the best way. And the difference is we're not affirming from our mind. We're really working with our whole body. So we get out of our head and into our whole body. So it's not like, oh, what am I thinking right now? It's like, what does my heart feel? Now, again, this might sound kind of ridiculous. When I first got into IFS, when my hypnotherapist/therapist got me into it, I was reticent for like a year to do it. I was like, Ellie, this sounds, I mean, come on. Like, and she was like, I really think you'd like it. And I'm like, all right, eventually I tried. And thank goodness I did, because it changed my freaking life, and I love sharing it with people now in the way we do. So, yeah, I whether or not you ever talk to us, whether or not you are trying even to manifest your SP, explore your body somatically when it comes to these ideas. Use things like IFS. Be curious in that way. And again, you don't have to work with us. You can work with a therapist. You can work with a counselor. But don't think that these cool therapeutic somatic modalities are all that different from the law of assumption. The truth is, they probably are not. They actually might be exactly the same thing, and they might be the missing tool in your shed, like Marvin alluded to, that could change your life and change your romantic situation forever. Marv, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I would say techniques a lot of times don't address that. Most of these LOA techniques don't really talk to those points, those, especially those points from the past, those hard points. And it's really hard for a lot of people to visualize, for instance, if somebody was, touched when they were younger. It's like I always go back to Emil Quay when Emil Quay has that great quote of your imagination will override your will. So what a lot of people, for instance, if you were touched when you were younger by somebody, an adult or whoever, you can try to will a scene of you with your SP or whatever, of you with this person, whatever, or try to will a scene of you being healed or whatever. But every time you close your eyes, your imagination, Emil Quay, your imagination is taking you back to that time you were touched as a kid, which makes it extremely hard for you to visualize. So you can't visualize or you can't affirm because you're not really getting down to the crux of what the problem is. And so that's why things like IFS are so important because when you got touched as a kid, what you got to realize is you stored that feeling in your body somewhere. And then most likely it spread and you never dealt with it. So it's extremely important to now that you're older, because I always say this, we have to take accountability. Accountability is lacking in a lot of people's mind nowadays. You have to take accountability for your actions now. What happened to you as a kid? No, it's not your fault. Or what happened to you when you were a teenager or whatever the travesty that you went through, whatever the hardship was, it's not your fault. But what is your fault? I mean, what is your responsibility and what is your fault is if you decide to feel into that or not, to deal with that or not. That is your responsibility. You cannot blame something that happened 10, 15, 20, 30, 40, whatever the time frame. You can't blame that for your lack of accountability in addressing that. So that's where, and a lot of people don't want to hear this shit. So I wanted to point that out because I think that's extremely important. A lot of that stuff gets stored in the body, and you need to figure out where it is, and you need to talk to it, which is another form of revision, like we were saying, and talk to that. And Tim and I, we do that because Tim and I, quite frankly, there is no term manifestation therapist, but that's what Tim and I are. We literally are there. There's no, we're manifestation therapists. Most people in this space, they, they tell you, even people that I'm cool with, people that do a great job, in my opinion, they'll just tell you self-love affirmations or say, oh yeah, just do this. Oh yeah, and it's so much deeper than that. And I don't think there's anybody else in this space that are manifestation therapists. Like there's no, I mean, this degree is this whole industry is a gray area. There's nobody in this industry that is, in my opinion, that I know of that's necessarily doing what Tim and I are doing. I'm sure there's a couple out there, but to this degree, as deep as we get, because most people just give you an affirmation and send you on your way, give you 5, 10 affirmations, send you on your way. Oh yeah, every hour, click your clicker and then remind yourself to say an affirmation. Do that type of stuff. You know what I mean? And me and Tim, we just don't do that because we realize this stuff is a lot deeper. And I think when people read Neville, they don't realize Neville and even Abdullah, this stuff is a lot deeper. And they meant it in a lot deeper way.
For
But when
sure.
you read it, it sounds so rudimentary or whatever. And you think that they just mean, oh, all I got to do is just assume. Oh, all I got to do is just affirm. But I think if you were to really, if any of us were able to really sit down with Neville or Abdullah or Emil Quay or any of these great teachers from the past, I'm sure in detail they would probably explain it. And that's the difference between reading something versus actually talking to the person. It's easy to read a book and get 20 different interpretations of it. But I'm sure if we were, like I said, if we were to sit down and talk to Abdullah or Neville, they would probably go into depth about what they really meant. And the books do a great job, but what the books don't really do, in my opinion, is tell you all of the messed up stuff you're going to go through in the 3D, most likely, and how hard it's going to be to maintain that state, as they call it, in the 3D and that type of stuff. So yeah, I just think it was important to mention all of that.
Definitely was. Yeah. And that your last point is particularly true for relationships, your relationship with yourself, and then your closest relationships, which are usually with family when you're young, and then with romantic partners later on. So yeah, if you want help, if you are serious, you can talk to us. Link is in the description. And until next time, just use your head and realize that so many of these cool therapeutic modalities are going to help you. Do not be scared of them. And if you need help utilizing them alongside the law of assumption, law of attraction, you know where to find us. Be good.